I either had to become a member so I could go with him, or he was going to divorce me because he was not supposed to have any outside attachments. He said it wasn't that he didn't love me anymore, and in fact he still loved me very much. It's just that I was only human and Bhagwan was superhuman, and therefore he was more deserving of my husband's love than I was.
How many of these people loved their neighbor, their family, in this totally giving way?
Alexandra Schmidt is one of France's leading experts on new religious movements.
How many have been so blind to all the negative aspects of the person they loved as to that of the guru?
Ellen is a spokeswoman for the Brahma Kumaris Raja Yoga Organization, which is completely administered by women who control 800 centers in 40 countries.
Our organization has the practice amongst all the participants of celibacy, whether in individuals or married couples.
I found myself being attracted to my wife, but I couldn't, because as soon as I felt attracted to her emotionally, physically, then it was difficult for me to maintain my celibacy. So the way I resolved that was to turn her into an object of dislike or hate.
We have living proof of thousands of couples who are living in this way and are finding much greater harmony and pure love as opposed to limited physical love.
Over 90% of the marriages in the Krishna movement end in divorce.
Rather than using our energy in raising a family and being involved in many physical relationships, we're focusing that energy on spirituality.
You see, what's so diabolical about all this is that it masquerades as spirituality.
In some schools of thought, to be spiritual, celibacy is encouraged, and yet in others, sexual perversion is practiced, not only among the gurus themselves, but by their disciples, including young children. Contradictions are also seen in the attitude towards women, who, on the spiritual level, are the focus of worship. Their femaleness is seen as the creative power of God. For instance, to be initiated by a female yogini is considered much holier than initiation by a male. And yet, on a day-to-day level, women are considered lower than men and treated as less than human. In the religious communities in India, which are known as ashrams, there is absolutely no place for children. And here in the West, the gurus generally don't want the burden and responsibility of children because it distracts the parents from devotion to him and his cause.
They have a school system whereby they force the children at age 5 to live in the ashram.
A lot of the kids did think it was like a prison. They didn't get to go anywhere but the ranch. And while we were at school, it's really just a place for the kids to go to get out of the grown-ups' way.
And they separate them from the mother and father, which is very unfortunate and very destructive.
Well, the kids would want to see their mom and dad, you know, just to be with them as a family. The kids wouldn't even know where their parents were, and they'd have to go look for them. And when they did, parents were usually too busy to talk to them. And so the kids were mainly by themselves and unsupervised.
The most heartbreaking result of the guru invasion to the West is the damage and harm it brings to the children, those who have no other choice than to live in the ashram because their parents have chosen to follow the guru. Separated from parents and cut off from outside relatives, they become community property. They lose their individuality and identity and are alienated from society.
Pastor Friedrich Hack has written over 30 books on various cults and is Germany's leading expert on new religious movements.
Children brought up in a cult are only educated to follow the commands of their leaders. They never experienced freedom. They never experienced a responsible life where they could have their own choice, where they could follow their will.
I've had these children taken them to parks, and they've seen normal people, and they'd recoil in fear from them because they don't look like devotees. The men don't have shaven heads or robes.
I didn't want to leave the ranch. I'd rather stay there because I was scared of the people outside of it. Because, I don't know, you just got a feeling down there, so you were worked into staying there.
Now, why would an organization want to disrupt families like that? My own understanding in the cult dynamic is that it's a principle of control. divide and conquer.
St. Augustine, in defining man, said that there was a God-shaped vacuum in man. Were you aware of such a vacuum in your life?
Oh, deeply, from the earliest moments I could think. Unless we're absolutely shallow people, there is something in us that wants to know why in the world are we here, what is ultimate truth. We want to settle this issue. And I think Augustine's statement is key. We do have a God-shaped vacuum. And we learn later that we are made by God in the image of God, and we have a deeply spiritual impulse to know and to connect.
What is it that we're searching for in the West that we haven't found?
Well, I think of myself as a child and as a university student. When I went from psychic stuff to LSD, there was a vacuum there. Frankly, most Christian churches, most of them seemed empty and irrelevant. They seemed vacuous, and many of the pastors didn't even believe in what they claimed to believe. So I think there's been, even the Bible talks about a great falling away, and a falling away of belief and a falling away of purpose. And I think people pick up on that. I think that's why Shirley MacLaine has gone out on a limb. She's gone into the New Age. I think the reason they suddenly see this enthralling, colorful, exciting alternative where they can have their cake and eat it too. They can be God, and they can do what they want to. There's no such thing as sin. And in the Eastern system, you can be God, you're an immortal soul, you can reincarnate, you are part of the universe, you own the universe.
Let me follow up on something you said. You said that you were seduced. Seduced is a negative word, and yet you've spoken about Sai Baba with such positive affection. What is happening here?
I'm speaking about him to tell you how powerful he is, and some of these other gurus. I believe completely that there is something very diabolical happening. But again, I think people having a spiritual need, the Bible warns about counterfeits, and he is one of many. He is a seducer. Later, in retrospect, after having been under some of these people, I see that he is an antichrist. Sai Baba is an antichrist. Anti meaning either against or in place of. And Matthew 24:24, the verse that brought me to Jesus Christ, and there shall come false prophets and antichrists, working great signs and wonders, working miracles in their antichrist, to deceive, if possible, the very elect of God. So the Bible clearly has a category for people like Sai Baba and the New Age masters. So then you say, what is an antichrist and what category is that? And I would tell you that it is someone who is fully possessed, not by a human spirit, but biblically by a demon, a demonic entity of the kind that, our modern minds search for paradigms, and you think of the movie The Exorcist and this ancient spirit from Iraq inhabiting the body of the little girl Reagan. Well, Baba's thing is far bigger than that, but an ancient principality that's been kicking around the cosmos for a long time, that is in this body that hates Jesus Christ, that hates God. It knows God. And therefore antichrist, instead of doing miracles, claiming to be God, like the devil in the wilderness with Christ saying, worship me, usurping God. And so these gurus are very useful because they manipulate the God-shaped vacuum in us and they draw it to themselves, and they are seducers. They're the ultimate spiritual Pied Pipers. I came back from India having seen the miracles of Sai Baba, and I learned now that they were satanic miracles. They were done by demonic empowerment. And I don't believe God is dead on the throne and that there are no miracles. I believe there are legitimate works of God now. He hasn't dried up on the throne and died. However, having said that, I think that there's this same thing was in the early church, that you had side-by-side real acts of God and counterfeits. And I really worry about media manipulators, crying on handkerchiefs and asking people to send in a lot of money to bless them. That betrays the dignity and majesty of God and the Holy Spirit. So you have all these converts, and you have this conversion, and if you're as brilliant as the devil is, you're going to do a direct forked attack on the believers of Christ. And one of the ways you can do it is through signs and wonders, because the devil's been in the signs and wonders game